In a time when questioning authority was a crime, when the mere act of thinking differently could cost you your life, one man defied the limits of human understanding. He believed the universe was infinite, that God existed in all things, and that true freedom was found in the pursuit of knowledge. His name was Giordano Bruno, a man who dared to challenge the greatest minds of his age, who stood unwavering before kings, scholars, and inquisitors alike. His ideas were so radical, so ahead of their time, that they would lead him to a gruesome fate, burned alive by the Inquisition. But his death was not the end. His vision of a limitless cosmos, teeming with life, bound not by dogma, but by universal laws, would survive. This is the story of a man who chose to face the flames rather than betray the truth. Giordano Bruno was born Filippo Bruno in 1548 in the small town of Nola, Italy, a land of rolling volcanic hills, where the very earth seemed to whisper secrets of transformation and change. From an early age, Bruno was different. He was not content with the explanations handed down to him. The stars above, the mysteries of existence. He wanted to understand everything. At 17 years old, he joined the Dominican convent in Naples, adopting the name Giordano in honor of a spiritual mentor. Here he gained access to one of the most extensive libraries in Europe, where theological, philosophical, and scientific texts filled the shelves. Bruno devoured every page, but he was no ordinary student. Where others memorized, he questioned. Where others obeyed, he challenged. He refused to accept a finite universe, enclosed within crystal spheres, dictated by Aristotelian and religious doctrine. Instead, he believed that creation itself must be boundless, because how could an infinite God create anything less than an infinite cosmos? The deeper he read, the more dangerous his thoughts became. He studied the forbidden works of Erasmus of Rotterdam and Nicholas of Cusa, absorbing ideas that the church had long sought to suppress. He proposed that God was not a distant ruler, but an omnipresent force, woven into the very fabric of existence. His ideas did not go unnoticed. Among his fellow scholars, whispers of heresy began to spread. Bruno did not merely repeat doctrine. He dissected it, rebuilt it, expanded it. And in a world where questioning the wrong things could mean death, this made him a threat. The church accused him of heresy, of denying the Holy Trinity, rejecting the worship of saints, and defying sacred tradition. The walls of the convent were closing in. Faced with the choice of submission or exile, Bruno made a decision that would shape the rest of his life. He fled. Leaving behind the monastery and his past, he stepped into a world that would either embrace his genius or seek to destroy him. But his journey had only just begun. When Giordano Bruno fled the Dominican convent, he did not just leave behind a monastery. He abandoned certainty, safety, and the world he had known. For the next 16 years, he wandered through Europe, moving from city to city, never staying in one place too long. His ideas made him both admired and feared, earning him friends among intellectuals and enemies among the powerful. In Geneva, he sought refuge among Calvinist reformers, believing that a new church might welcome new ideas. Instead, he found their doctrine just as rigid as the one he had fled. In Paris, he found favor with King Henry III, who was captivated by Bruno's brilliant oratory and radical thoughts. The king gave him a position as a philosophy professor, allowing him to put his ideas to paper. It was here that Bruno wrote some of his most groundbreaking works, daring to speak of a cosmos far greater than anyone had imagined. But it was in England where his ideas would reach their most dangerous form. Bruno arrived in London in 1583 and immediately began engaging in heated debates. He did not simply support Copernicus's heliocentric model, he went further, much further. For Bruno, the sun was not the center of the universe. It was merely one of countless stars, each orbited by its own planets, perhaps even inhabited by other beings. In his work, Dell'infinito universo e mondi, on the infinite universe and worlds, Bruno shattered the last remnants of medieval thought. The universe was not just vast, it was infinite. The stars were not celestial ornaments, but distant suns. The earth was not unique. There were countless worlds, each potentially teeming with life. His ideas were heretical, revolutionary, and utterly unacceptable to both scientists and theologians alike. But Bruno was not just an astronomer. His philosophy went beyond science. It was mystical, spiritual, and deeply personal. For him, God was not a distant ruler, sitting above creation. God was everywhere. God was in all things. The universe itself was an expression of the divine. This belief set him apart from other thinkers of his time. Even Galileo, who would later fight his own battle with the Inquisition, did not dare to embrace Bruno's vision of an infinite cosmos. But Bruno was fearless. He attacked religious dogmatism, denounced blind obedience, and championed the individual's right to seek truth without constraint. And for that, he was hunted. As his reputation grew, so did the dangers that followed him. His defiant nature alienated potential allies and attracted powerful enemies. His ideas had spread across Europe, but they had also sealed his fate. In 1592, he was lured back to Italy, promised safety, promised the chance to debate his ideas in a fair and open forum. But the promise was a trap. Upon his arrival in Venice, he was arrested by the Inquisition. His trial had begun. But Bruno would not break. Even in chains, even knowing what awaited him, he refused to recant his ideas. Because for Bruno, truth was worth any price. The year 1592 marked the beginning of Giordano Bruno's final battle. Not with swords or words, but with the weight of dogma pressing against the force of free thought. He was arrested in Venice, accused of heresy, and placed in the hands of the Holy Inquisition. At first, the charges were vague, but as the interrogations continued, his true crime became clear. He had defied the Church's claim of a finite universe. He had declared that countless worlds, perhaps with life, existed beyond Earth. He had said that God was not separate from creation, but woven into every atom of existence. In 1593, Bruno was transferred to Rome, where he faced the full power of the Inquisition. His trial would last 8 years, making it one of the longest and most infamous heresy trials in history. Bruno was accused of denying key Catholic doctrines, including the Holy Trinity. He saw God as an all-pervading force, not a singular figure. The virginity of Mary. He questioned miracles, believing in natural divine laws. The final judgment, to Bruno, existence was cyclical, not a one-time divine plan. But his greatest crime was his vision of an infinite universe, a cosmos that rendered Earth and mankind no longer at the center of God's creation. For the Inquisitors, this was unacceptable. If Bruno was right, then the entire structure of religious authority was built on illusion. And so they demanded that he recant. They threatened him. They tortured him. They gave him every opportunity to abandon his beliefs. But Bruno did not yield. For him, truth was beyond the grasp of fear. Even when faced with the overwhelming power of the Church, he stood firm, declaring, "Perhaps you pronounce this sentence with greater fear than I receive it." These words would become legendary, a final act of defiance against an institution that sought to silence him. On February 8, 1600, the Inquisition delivered its verdict. Giordano Bruno was sentenced to death. His punishment would be one of the most brutal methods reserved for the worst heretics, death by fire. To the Church, Bruno's execution was not just about punishing a man, it was about erasing a dangerous idea. If the universe was infinite, if the stars were other suns, if there were other worlds, then Earth was not special. Then man was not the center of creation. Then religious authority was built on a fragile illusion. And so, they chose to destroy him. But in their attempt to bury his ideas in ash, they unknowingly made him immortal. His death would mark the beginning, not the end, of a revolution in human thought. On the morning of February 17, 1600, Giordano Bruno was led through the streets of Rome, bound, gagged, and prepared for his execution at Campo de' Fiori. The square was filled with onlookers, some horrified, some indifferent, some secretly mourning the man who dared to defy the world. As he was tied to the stake, he remained silent. His mouth had been clamped shut with an iron gag, preventing him from speaking his final words. But he did not beg. He did not cry. He did not break. The flames were lit. They rose around him, consuming his body, but not his ideas. For the Inquisition, this was supposed to be a warning to others. For history, it became a symbol of defiance, of courage, of the unbreakable power of thought. Bruno had been burned alive, but his vision would set the future on fire. For centuries, Bruno was forgotten, erased from textbooks, his name spoken only in whispers. But the universe he described, infinite, boundless, teeming with life, was not forgotten. His ideas would survive in the works of future scientists, philosophers, and thinkers. More than 2 centuries after his death, in 1889, a bronze statue of Bruno was erected at the very site where he had been burned. Today, he stands tall in Campo de' Fiori, a silent reminder that no fire, no institution, no force in history can truly silence the pursuit of truth. His sacrifice was not in vain. His executioners may have had the power to destroy his body, but not his vision, not his infinite universe, not his eternal truth. Giordano Bruno's story is not just a historical tragedy. It is a warning and an inspiration. A warning that even today, ideas that challenge the status quo are met with resistance, censorship, and persecution. An inspiration that the courage to defend knowledge, even in the face of death, is the most powerful act of all. The question we must ask ourselves is this: would we have the strength to stand as he did when the world demands our silence? Because in the end, the only ideas that survive are the ones worth dying for. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Was Giordano Bruno a visionary ahead of his time, or a reckless radical? Do you believe the universe is infinite, as he claimed? What other hidden figures in history deserve to be remembered? If you want to dive deeper into hidden knowledge, lost history, and esoteric wisdom, subscribe, because this is just the beginning. Thanks for watching.